Hello and welcome to Cardboard and Plastic. Today's video, I have a PSA order that I got back. I sent in November. It was the 50s to 70s special. I sent in 11 cards, 9 got graded, 2 cards, 1 card was minimum size, the other card was evidence of trimming. I brought both cards out. I don't see any evidence in trimming on the other one. The other one, minimum size, it measured up. Typically, I would just send them back to PSA. They would grade them. I'm not going to be using PSA anymore. I'll explain that as I go through the video. I have another order that I got back from the 70s and the 80s. I will not be showing that order off. It just is upsetting to me. And the hobby's supposed to be fun. So those cards, I'm either going to sell them. I'm going to crack out a few, send to SGC, and I'll give you some of those results when I get them back. And I do make mistakes when I grade. Typically, in an order of 20 cards, like I'll miss something on one card. I don't miss 5, 6 things out of 14 cards. That doesn't happen. So I'll show you this order. And I'm going to kind of explain why I'm not going to be using PSA in the future. So I did get 1-4. And this is a 1961 Harmon Killebrew. And the card looked absolutely gorgeous. It does have a little print defect. And from this, like, I don't think anybody can tell where the little surface wrinkle is. However, if you hold the card up into the light, it kind of there. I don't know how I missed it, right? So there's a little surface wrinkle right there. Actually, in the past, like, I think they gave cards like this like a 5. But it is there. They caught it, which is good. So they looked at the card. So it is what it is. By the way, I mean, I'm not looking at my cards from angles. I can't even see that head on. I have wrinkles myself, so I'm just going to keep that card in my PC, nicely centered. But again, right, if you see like sometimes like a 4, I mean, I wouldn't quite, right now though, I would say there could be a possibility that PSA doesn't know what they're doing. They just gave it a 4 because I had like a little rounded corner. But typically, that's what's going to happen, right? You have that little surface wrinkle. All right. What should we go for next? And I submitted this. This is a 1962 sticker. By the way, this sticker is not a sticker, it's a stamp from the 1962. And this is gorgeous. The centering of the stamp, the color of the stamp. It got a 5. I don't know how they grade stamps. Maybe it wasn't cut perfectly. I don't know. But that's for a PC. Let's go for the 1968 Eddie Matthews. This card is perfect. And like, this is kind of what I tell people for cards. Just look at the back corners. If the back corners look good, and look for surface wrinkles and little creases. But the back tells a lot of the story about the quality and the condition of a card. And this card, I mean, this is gorgeous. It has a little print defect. And I think PSA is just hammering print defects right now. But this card, I thought was a 7... Possibly, I thought it was a 7 all day long. And it got a 6. And I think that's the story of this order, is everything was graded 1 grade harsh, in my opinion. I've seen little surface wrinkles on 5s before, because they put creases for their 4s. So I think everything about 1 grade harsh. And for me, that's okay, right? Because if I send it back in, I mean, these cards could get like 7s. Or If they have like a super lenient grader, it could get an 8, right? So plus or minus, right? So if I see a card, I say, okay, I think it's a 7. If it gets a 6, if it gets an 8, I'm fine with that, right? Because that's what grading is to me. It's plus or minus 1 grade. My 70s, 80s orders, it was, I don't know what that person was doing that was grading the cards. I was getting 5s and 6s. I mean, the only thing that I could come up with is if I got multiple 5s and 6s, they were damaging the card somewhere through the process. And one of them, I have very strong evidence they damaged. I looked at pictures before, and I even looked at the scans that they had, and then all of a sudden there's a crease in the bottom left-hand corner. So maybe all the grades were accurate and they just damaged all the cards. I'm going to crack a few and I'll find out. Let's see. We will do this 1975 Topps Mini, Steve Garvey. I thought this was an 8, possibly a 9, and of course, it gets a 7. Take a look at Topps Mini 7s from old Cert numbers and compare it to this. You will see them slanted. You will see them slanted with a chipped corner. And again, they're just grading hard. And it's not, that's a PC card for me. Like almost all of these are PC cards. So it bothers me a little bit, but again, that's what, I mean, grading is a subjective thing. But I'll get into something that's not subjective that they did change, and that does bother me. So this is a 1960. And again, this card, okay, by the way, the centering is off. Now, if you're a centering fan, this card you can find centered. If you find it centered, the registration is going to look absolutely horrific. This card is about as nice as you can find for the registration. I mean, these cards, I mean, the majority of them just look horrific. So for me, when I buy cards, look at cards, number one, before even centering, is the registration. How nice does the card look, right? So for me, that is super, super important. And then after that, it's centering. Third after that, right? Corners, edges, right? But registration has to be number one for me. If I wanted this card centered and to look like this, I mean, you're talking hundreds of dollars, right? So, got a 6. Kind of fair. However, this is something that, according to like older standards, possibly that could have got a 7, because that card is like perfect besides the actual centering. So people have done videos about this. So PSA changed a lot of their centering numbers. Like a PSA 10 used to be 60/40. And then now that's a PSA 9, right? So everything kind of jumped down by about 5%. And it was very shady how that change happened. So when I sent my cards in, I read the rubric. The rubric said, if you want a PSA 9, your centering has to be between 65-35 for one of the sides, right? Fine. However, during the process, they changed the centering. By the way, there's evidence now that they changed those numbers years before. So that is misleading, false, right? And right on the rubric. They had a different standard on their rubric than what they were using. And by the way, when you send your cards in, if you sent your cards in before with a PSA 10 and the card was, let's say, a little bit better than 60/40, you thought I had a chance for a 10, and rightly so. However, now you don't. Is that fair? I'll let you guys decide. By the way, that's not the only reason I'm not going to use PSA, but let's see, what else do we got? We'll go here. A beautiful 1959 red shadings, and that got a 6. A little off-centered, but again, I go by registration. Let's see. Let's do the Goose Gossage. By the way, I have 7s that don't look as nice as this. So I was like, you know what? This is a beautiful card. Beautiful color. This is an 8 all day long. I graded from 2020 to now with PSA. And if I sent this card in the past, I'm like, this is an 8. Possibly a 9. And it got a 7. This is kind of the story of this order. Just everything is like one grade lower than I kind of expected. So, from a value standpoint, right? And typically, like, I usually get like one card that is like graded, like almost every one was, except I knew this was kind of like a 6 because of the centering for the 1960. So Bobby Cox, this is a 1969. And again, I mean, this card is super sharp. Gorgeous, a little off-centered left to right, but I mean, very common with this. It's almost impossible to find these perfectly centered. I thought this was an 8 because, I mean, it is just very sharp with the corners, the edges, the registration's great. And it got a 7. And the last card is a 1975 Robin Yount. This is the Hostess. I do already have the 1975 Topps and the Topps Mini Robin Yount, both in SGC holders. And this card, a little toning on the back, but I mean, this card was cut really nice. I got this from ComC, and it's like, you know, this is a 9. I look at other 9s, and this is nicer than a lot of those other 9s on PSA, on eBay in PSA slabs. Just absolutely gorgeous for this card. And again, always, I think it's a 9, gets an 8. So, what are my feelings going forward? I am buying a lot less raw cards, and I'll start buying already graded cards, especially in new PSA holders. The standards are just tougher than they have ever been. I mean, go back and look, right, at a 1973 Goose Gossage rookie card. Look at 7s. I mean, you'll even see dinged corners. You'll see horrific printing issues. We are at a point where PSA had a grading scale that they've used, and then they got a little bit tougher, right? I think people noticed that when they had the Lighthouse labels, they got a little bit tougher. And then recently they got even tougher again. I'm going to send cards for now to SGC. But even my last SGC order was graded a little bit tougher than they had in the past. So I'm going to use them. They were pretty fair the last time I used them. And if they kind of go down the PSA path because they're owned by the same company, I'm really just going to never buy raw cards. I'm just going to buy graded cards and try to get them at the prices of the old labels, because it's going to be just a better value proposition for me. So the other order, I said I'm not going to show you. I'm going to crack a few, and I'll keep the labels, so in case that they cross over, a higher grade's not crossover, but I'm going to crack and resubmit to another company. And I'll make a video of that. SGC does have a $12 1970s and 80s order, which I wasn't really planning on using, but now since I had a 80s, 90s order with PSA, there's a few cards that I just want a second opinion on. So we'll have a little fun with that. And on Wednesday, I'm going to put out another video. And the video is going to be, I slabbed some cards up for my Hall of Fame auto collection for baseball. Also changed out some labels. And also, I'm going to show you what I'm doing with more modern type cards from like 2000s on. I'm not going to be grading them. Well, I'll be grading them myself. Well, not even grading, slabbing them myself. So, in the comments below, let me know what the favorite card from the reveal was. And if you actually are experiencing similar things to me, from everybody that's been commenting on my videos, I think it's the same story. It's just things are different and not in a good way. So, as always, have a great day. Keep on collecting.